For this month's episode of Transit Unplugged TV, I travel to Music City, USA, Nashville, Tennessee, and meet with Steve Bland, Chief Executive Officer of the Nashville MTA's WeGo Public Transportation System. WeGo Public Transit provides traditional city bus service, countywide paratransit service throughout Davidson County, regional commuter bus service from downtown Nashville to 6 surrounding counties in Middle Tennessee, and commuter rail service between downtown Nashville and Lebanon, Tennessee. Many of the bus routes serve the downtown transit station, WeGo Central, where we met for most of these interviews. With the downtown area of Nashville packed with tourists most evenings and lots of local jitney-type service, the WeGo system encounters many challenges that a traditional transit system does not often have to encounter. On today's episode, we also hear from many of the senior leadership team about their projects to expand and improve mobility services to this American hub of entertainment and employment. So Steve, we're here at the APTA Expo. When we were down in Nashville, I talked with some of your staff about what you're doing. What 2 or 3 of the big things you got going on that you're excited about?
Well, I wish I could limit it to 2 or 3.
Yeah, okay.
First of all, we're working on building out a network of neighborhood transit centers, neighborhood mobility hubs. And there'll be places where our bus routes come together, but there'll also be places for micro-mobility. Working very closely with Nashville's new Department of Transportation to build out our pedestrian infrastructure.
That's important.
Absolutely. If you can't get to the bus stop, you can't ride the bus. And we see that all over the place in our system. Our riders tell us all the time. We ask in our survey about perceptions of safety. From a security standpoint, they feel safe on the bus. Where the issue is how do I get to the bus? So do I have to cross 6 lanes of speeding traffic? Do I have to crawl through drainage ditches? So a lot of what we're working on are those infrastructure-related projects. And the transit centers will be key to that. So that basically we can create this spider web network of our system, but then have a more localized delivery network. Working now with Uber on our WeGo Link program, in some of our less densely developed areas of the county, being able to feed that first mile, last mile solution.
I got to talk to Trey Walker, Chief Development Officer of the Nashville MTA, and Lydia Benda, Civil Engineer who's a project manager there, about implementing the recently adopted Metro Nashville Transportation Plan.
Last year, our city adopted a transportation plan, so there's Nashville Transportation. And with that, we understand that there's some physical assets that come along with that, and improving access to stops, the quality of our stops, and the amenities that are at those locations. And as part of that plan, we've got about 95 locations to improve our stop amenities, whether it be an existing sheltered stop that's currently undersized and we want to expand access to crosswalks and expand access to the sidewalk network that we have, or a site that has meets our guidelines for a new sheltered stop that we want to install a shelter there. And a lot of what we have here in Nashville is, we were talking earlier about a constrained right-of-way and real tight roads. We're trying to do a lot within a little bit of area. And so these projects are not just taking our crew out and bolting down a shelter with a sidewalk. These are sidewalk projects. These are very much civil engineering type projects where we're incorporating road drainage, sidewalk construction, and planning along a corridor, as well as just as well as determinate locations.
And what kind of challenges did you face when you were implementing these big projects, and you're starting to continue to do some, it sounds like?
Well, I think some of the first challenges that we faced was just cooperating with the Nashville Department of Transportation and the Tennessee Department of Transportation, making sure that we were all on the same board, on the same plan, and we went through several meetings collaborating with them on the design. The Nolensville project in particular had 5 different design concepts incorporated on the corridor, and those included just your regular sidewalk stop and a bus bulb which extends the sidewalk out toward the travel lane, kind of taking up some of on-street parking, and a bus island which we incorporated at the zoo. One of the major projects that I've been just working on, just finished up, is the Murfreesboro Transit Signal Priority Project. So we just completed that project in cooperation with Nashville Department of Transportation with funding from the Federal Transit Authority. And in the spring of 2021, we just finished this project. It's a project that incorporates 11 miles of corridor on the Murfreesboro and Bell Road corridor. In Murfreesboro Pike, our Route 55 is our highest ridership with over 2,400 riders as of June 2021. So the project incorporated 11 miles of roadway, 42 signals, 23 upgraded transit stops with real-time signage. It included fiber on the entire corridor and a centralized traffic management system, an upgraded CAD AVL on the entire fleet. So it sets us up for being able to expand TSP to other corridors, and so we're really excited about that.
In about 6 months, I'd be interested to kind of get some of the results of how that's working for you, to see if it's, well, obviously, this is a city making a priority decision, right? We're going to prioritize buses over regular traffic, and we want people who are riding buses to feel like it's getting them faster than if they walked on some of these corridors, right? Or a jog at least, yeah. So, wow, that's great. It sounds like it was a very detailed, complex coordination project.
It was.
Yeah.
We had some really great opportunities through this project to build our relationship with the city, the Nashville DOT, and as well as TDOT.
And I'm with Felix Castrodad and Katie Freudberg, who work here. Thank you so much for being on our first ever video and audio podcast.
This is exciting. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, excited to be here in Music City, right? One of the best cities in the country. So Felix, tell us about what your job is and what you do.
Sure. I'm Director of Planning and Grants. So we look at the planning of a system, long-term planning. One of the main things that we do is the development of our strategic plan in motion. And then we work very closely with Katie and other departments with the service planning and also applying for grants, managing grants, and with the development department that we're part of in implementation of the capital plan as well.
So tell us about the recent plan you undertook, and then we'll talk to Katie about actually implementing it.
Sure. So Better Bus is basically, I'll start by saying it's a product of our strategic plan in motion that was completed in 2016. In motion identified a series of strategies for making transit service better in Nashville over the next several years. So that's where Better Bus comes in, and it's a 5-year plan basically to be able to make transit better, not only to improve the quality of service, but also to make sure that we are catering and the system is still relevant and addressing some of the needs that the riders have, and just to make sure that we are connecting those dots. So what we're seeing is that many of our routes have been in place for decades, and except for some minor tweaks and changes that we've done over the years, they may not be responding to what the current context is.
Yes.
And so the neighborhoods are changing, the people are moving, jobs are coming to other places, and we have to make sure that we are connecting those dots, that we are improving the access to jobs, access to education, to food. How is our system being more responsive? I think in light of the pandemic, we know that ridership is not the main indicator, but access is going to be a key. So I think Better Bus is going to help us to better address some of those needs.
That's awesome. And Katie, why don't you introduce yourself and what you do and how you started to implement these changes that were laid out in the plan?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Katie Freudberg. I'm the Scheduling and Service Planning Manager. So our department kind of takes the master plan as well as any short-term changes that are needed due to traffic or ridership changes or changing street conditions. And traditionally we've implemented those on a biannual basis. Over the last year and a half, we've had quite a few markups. I think I might change my terms of employment to get paid by the markup. And retire early. I guess over the last year and a half, while we've been working on the Better Bus plan, we've also been kind of scrambling to change service to meet changing conditions, to meet the safety needs that Nick's been talking about, while still meeting rider needs.
Next, I had the opportunity to speak with Nick Oldham, Senior Safety Program Manager at WeGo Transit.
I originally was hired to, as the FTA was kind of pushing out some regulations on safety management systems. That's what I was originally hired for. So I started March 1st. And then March 3rd, we had a tornado come through Nashville, and so I kind of adjusted and stopped talking about SMS stuff and trying to figure out how to route through down power lines and trees. And then March 5th was our first case of COVID-19 in the state of Tennessee. And so it was like, hey, Nick, head down to the Office of Emergency Management. We've got some stuff down there for you to do. And so I'm sitting in the room like a deer and, caught in headlights like, yeah, so Nick, what is MTA doing? Let's figure that out. So it kind of shifted to making sure that, as I was following Steve's leadership, he was really all about making sure that we kept our employees whole and that we did everything that we could to make sure that our passengers had a safe ride, because we really were essential to, as COVID was kind of picking up and hospitals were getting crowded, those employees that were working at the hospitals relied on our public transportation in order to get there. So we really felt like we were an essential part of keeping, everybody whole as the pandemic increased. So it kind of shifted from keeping, looking at bus accidents to really how do we keep people alive.
Yeah, and how did you? What's been your game plan that you've accomplished?
Sure. So the first thing that I thought important to do is we got a hold of the director of public health. And had them actually come to our facility and view how we're cleaning buses and our disinfecting practices, and then had them give us some recommendations. What can we do more of? What should we be doing less of? We've had no cases that I'm aware of, and I talked to public health just a week ago, that no cases have been tied to our public transportation.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing, Nick. So so now that the Delta variant is kind of coming through and all that, what are you projecting going forward? Do you have any changes you're going to do, or are you going to just kind of stick with the program because it's worked?
Yeah, we're sticking with it, but we're also, we just contracted a consultant to come in. TDS and Associates is coming in. They're doing, biopathogen protocols for us, biosafety protocols. They're going to be testing our actual facilities for COVID-19, both, the original virus and the Delta variant. We're getting information that there's another one that's, kind of popped up in Houston and making its way here. So they're going to be, kind of creating a protocol for us and making sure that we're doing everything that we can to keep that variant in a suppressed state here within our ranks.
Unplugged podcast contributor Alea Carey recently had the chance to chat a little bit more with Renuka Christoph of WeGo Transportation about some of the great communications and marketing efforts they've been undertaking.
Hi, everybody. It's Alea Carey. I'm here with Renuka Christoph from WeGo in Nashville. She works with Steve Bland, and she's the Director of Marketing and Communications. Welcome, Renuka.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
So we're going to walk through a couple of things that have been successful for you recently in your outreach and communications. The first thing that you and I talked about in our chats leading up to this is about your newsletter and the success of that. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, an external newsletter, it's a great opportunity to showcase the work that's being done, the work that's going to get done. And, I'm big on utilizing links. So you just give short blurbs about each priority item and then have a link. So it's not that's to keep it from being this long, mile-long newsletter. Right. We have an audience of about 8,000, and I'm able to view the success rate by looking at the dashboard. I'm able to see how many folks opened it, what they clicked on. So it's really helpful to have a dashboard like that to see metrics.
And how do you give them a way to sign up?
So community events or online events, virtual events, different places we go with WeGo, and online folks can sign up.
Okay. And another thing we talked about that has been pretty successful for you, maybe especially recently with some interesting stories, is your media relations program.
Yeah. So the key there is to focus on telling your story. And every place there are stories to be told, and there's people that want to hear them. So some examples of recent press coverage, something very cool is our bus operators and mechanics they ranked first place in the state for a bus rodeo. And so that got some pretty good coverage. There's a local news channel outlet that picked that up, as well as a couple of papers. Gospel legend Bobby Jones is doing voiceovers for the bus. So
fantastic.
Got some good press coverage on that. Our in-house designer made a giant face mask for one of our fleet vehicles. So another example. We were in the Nashville Daily for welcoming riders back, and the feature showcased our bus operators being on the front line, how we never stopped, and we just kept on moving. So
right. And when you get those stories, you continue to promote them on your social channels, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
What's the most attractive social channel for you guys?
Facebook. Facebook for sure. But yeah, so whenever we get press coverage, we'll repost and share that. So, again, to get more mileage. And then I like to include within each newsletter, I like a press coverage section. So that press coverage is showcased on social, but then also in our newsletter. And then, of course, on our website, we have a press coverage area.
Right. Okay. Well, Renuka, thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. And we look forward to hearing more good news from WeGo.
Thanks. Look forward to talking again.
On each episode, I like to sit down over a meal with transit leaders, talk to them a little more personally about their lives, careers, and their job responsibilities. Here in Nashville, I was able to sit down for lunch with Dan Freudberg, Deputy Chief Operating Officer, Operations Systems, and Renuka Christoph, Director of Marketing and Communications. Dan, so you just got promoted. Tell me about what you were doing and what you're doing now.
Sure. So I've been with WeGo now for about 11 years, and just started as the Deputy Chief Operating Officer for Operations Systems. And so in that role, I am working really closely with our IT department, who will also be in that umbrella, and also our operations and oversight department, to basically focus on continuous improvement initiatives, especially within our operations and maintenance department, but the agency as a whole as well. So figuring out how we can use technology and process improvement to streamline our operations, make service more efficient, but the main goal is really to make service more reliable. So working on things like headway management projects, or our new fare collection system, projects like that have a technology element, but aren't just like a new shiny toy. They're actually trying to solve a problem and make service better for our customers.
That's awesome. Yep. And so you ready to talk, or you want to not?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So as he's working on these new ideas, what do you do from there? If he comes up with a new way to improve service, then you promote it?
So this is what makes it so fun, is I get to hear all these brilliant ideas, and then I get to communicate to the community, hey, here's what we are doing. Here's what makes public transit easy to use. Here's how it's easier for you to use. Here's how you ride the bus. Because that's another thing. How to ride the bus, it can be intimidating for your average person that's never been on one. And so one of my goals is to make it so user-friendly that anyone at any age will realize, hey, I can ride the bus and I can handle this. I know what to do based on these select routes, which I'm intending to promote down the road. So my long-term goal is to have these staycations so that you can easily go from Green Hills Mall to Hillsborough Village, which is a popular area to get ice cream. There's a local theater. And I want to make it very accessible and fun.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
Let me ask one more question.
Sure.
And that is, we didn't get to talk about this before, but you all are also changing your bus stop signs and making some other improvements to the system?
Yeah, so historically our bus stop signs have just been a blue sign that says bus stop, which is, it serves a purpose, but we want to try to provide more information there. So we're doing things like including the bus routes that actually stop at that, which other agencies have done, but we want to make that investment, and also including information so that people can really easily understand where those routes are going. So what's the major destination along those borders? And also we're trying to provide additional sort of information that can allow customers to do self-service. So as an example, having a barcode or a website customers can go to download our app where they can use their phone to pay for the ride on the bus. So they don't have to worry about, having change or whatever. They just look at the bus stop sign, say this is how I pay for my fare, download the app, and they're ready to go.
Awesome.
Dan Freudberg continues.
Dan, tell us about the latest project you've got going on called WeGo Link.
Yeah, we've got an exciting project, and what WeGo Link really is, it's a first and last mile connection service, connecting customers in an area that traditionally is really difficult to serve with fixed route, low to medium density, not a great connected street network. Trying to connect those individuals to one of our frequent transit lines, in this case the Murfreesboro Road corridor, which is also the same corridor we have signal priority.
That's what we were just talking about. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So we've got a very good level of fixed route service there, but not everybody can get to it because of maybe disability, walking distance, sidewalk infrastructure.
Okay.
So we are partnering with Uber and also with one of our third-party paratransit providers to provide on-demand service in a predefined service area around a couple of transfer locations on this frequent transit corridor. And
so they don't have to call a day ahead or 7 days ahead like ADA traditional?
Exactly.
Okay.
Now they can, if they want, they can pre-schedule.
Okay.
But they can also just go on demand when they'd like to, and in a few minutes there'll be a vehicle available for them. And basically you have to take a trip within the service area, and as long as it starts or ends at one of these two transfer locations, then we'll essentially subsidize the cost of the trip to make it affordable for people. So for most of the trips that people will take within the service program, the cost would be about $2 or about the same as a fixed route.
Wow, that's not bad. So you noted this is a pilot. What is success going to look like for you? How will you know if you want to continue it or expand it?
So we'll be looking at things like utilization. We'll be looking at travel times and responsiveness. One of the things that we want to make sure is that this service is also accessible and equitable to customers that maybe are paying with cash or using wheelchairs, and that's where our third-party provider comes in. So we'll be looking at service equivalency between those two service providers. And then we'll also be looking at customer satisfaction. We'll be issuing surveys and that kind of thing. And of course, cost. We want to make sure we're trying to stay relatively in range with what our cost per passenger is on fixed route. It can be a little bit higher because we know it's point-to-point trip, but we want to stay within that area.
And we wrap up today's episode, continuing our conversation with Steve Bland, Chief Executive Officer of Nashville's WeGo Transit System. He talks about the unique nature of serving a city with what he calls a transportainment industry. Lots of other type of jitney services operating there. And he also has a look at his view of the future, which is very positive for public transportation in his city.
If we're not a 24-hour city, we are certainly a 21-hour city. So it's very dynamic at all times of the day and night. That creates opportunities and challenges. One of our opportunities is a significant service sector working population that we get to serve. But the other is talking about, the variable traffic conditions. On a Saturday night in downtown Nashville, it can take as long as 40 minutes for us to get a bus from one end of downtown or to the other because of all that investment in traffic. So we're actually working with the city now, the Tennessee Department of Transportation, and the Nashville Downtown Partnership on a mobility study to say, okay, how effectively can we move folks into and through the downtown core? Where can we put bus priority lanes? How do we deal with micro-mobility? How do we deal with, and I know you had MJ Maynard from Las Vegas on your panel yesterday. MJ and I share the commonality of what we call the transportainment industry.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Pedal taverns, party barges, hot tubs on wheels. I think she and I have concluded that if it has wheels and you can drink on it, it's in Las Vegas and it's in Nashville.
Yeah.
So how do we effectively manage that, that infrastructure or that attraction, in a way that we can still sustain a high quality of life for people who live in in Nashville. And the residential population downtown is booming. We went from having less than 5,000 downtown residents 10 years ago. We're up to about 20,000 now, and we're shooting at 30,000 in the next few years just with the residential projects that are under construction and development now. So I'm tremendously optimistic about the future of our industry, about the future of our system and our city. And frankly, coming down here, meeting with old friends, meeting new friends, and finding out a lot about what the technology companies have going on, what our vehicle manufacturers have going on. I don't think I've ever been more optimistic.
That's great. Well, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it.
You bet.
As you can see, Nashville's WeGo Transportation has an excellent leadership team led by veteran CEO Steve Bland, and they've got the pedal to the metal in continuing to improve and expand public transportation services in Music City, USA, Nashville, Tennessee.